Good evening, everyone. My name is Logan Grab, and this evening we are going to be looking at the Board of Education Strategic Planning presentation. Now, this is something that I had been asked to put together. It was one of the strategic planning process to guide the district in improving student achievement. And this plan is to inform everyone on the strategic planning model that I think will improve student achievement across the district. So we're going to delve into all of the different stages that this involves and the subcategories within those stages. And I know this is something that we've been anticipating looking at for quite some time, so I am excited to finally show it to you. Now, the first stage we have is the development, and the first stage of development is building a team, and that is the core planning team. So this is going to be composed of different members within the district. It is made up of people who know the most about our school district as a whole, and they are who will do much of the work in designing the strategic planning process. Now, the members of the core planning team will be the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the director of operations, the director of student services, the school board president, and the school board vice president. This is a collective group of people who have a lot of knowledge about our district as a whole and will be able to work very well together in executing the strategic planning process. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have other individuals that are part of this process as we work through it, but this is going to be the core team who does, like I said, most of the work and starts this process off and brings everything together. So once that team is formed, we look at the environmental scan, which is done by the core planning team. So this involves the core planning team studying information about trends and issues that might be going on in education that we might be experiencing here in the district. And there are a variety of ways that we can look at that. So we want to look at the internal environment and the external environment. So the first step is looking at the internal environmental aspects that we want to identify. Now, we want to make sure that we are identifying district strengths and weaknesses. We want to identify what is the district vision, mission, and values that are currently in place. What are the current resources that are available to the district? What are the funding sources of those resources and what is currently available? There is a very strong connection between resources and the funding. Next, we would look at the current policies and procedures that are in place within the district. And then what are our technology resources? Because that is definitely an important piece in education today and has been for quite some time, but that is definitely a key piece that we want to look at when we're inspecting the environmental aspects from the internal stage. Now, next, we want to look at the external environmental focus areas. And these are areas where that might not be within the district directly, things that are going on, what's happening in the community. And this might be connected to, having communication with somebody like the Chamber of Commerce, or other community groups. But the biggest thing that we want to focus on whenever we're looking at those stakeholders outside of the school district with the external environment is what are our opportunities for growth? Where are areas where we can expand and do better? And then what are some of those threats to success? What are those roadblocks that might impede us from achieving those opportunities for growth? Now, whenever we look at some of the current educational trends, there are so many different ones out there, but this list is some of the high flyers that are on. If you look at anything online, you're going to find these most definitely as educational trends today. So we've got self-care, and that's coming from, a student aspect, blended learning. We have a lot of unique learning situations for students right now due to the pandemic. So the style in which they are learning may be all in the classroom. They may be virtual. There may be a blend or hybrid of that. Looking at personalized learning, STEAM curriculum is something that we have had for quite some time. Genius Hour, that is where, students have an hour every week dedicated to a particular project or anchor project that they have going on. Digital citizenship ties back to talking about those technology resources in that internal environment scan. How are we doing when it comes to teaching our students to be good digital citizens? Bite-sized learning, that is something that is a little bit new out there. So that's popping up more and more, a little bit of a buzzword there. Social emotional learning, that is one that is definitely of very high importance right now. You have students who are dealing with things that they have never dealt before. They've never dealt with before. We have teachers dealing with things, and all educators dealing with things that they've never dealt with before. So being sure that we are being there for those students and providing them with those resources is very important. Then we have gamification, and then experiential learning. So I want to go back to just for a second, just to give a little bit of clarification though, on the bite-sized learning, because I think it's something that is just new that a lot of us aren't familiar with. It is kind of shortening your pieces of content or lessons and having a really high focus on just a single topic or problem. So that's definitely something that we're seeing more of. So I think in some ways in education, we've seen where, we want to hit a lot of different areas in some courses before, and we're seeing a bit of a shift to, we don't necessarily want quantity, we want quality and depth in our instruction. So this just gives us a good idea of what some of those current educational trends are out there today. So moving on from that, we go to our stakeholder survey. Now, this is developed by the core planning team and is given to stakeholders. And this is going to be a forced choice survey that is given to stakeholders. So stakeholders they're forced to pick answers. And that provides, whenever they answer those questions, it gives the core planning team some solid information on what they think and what they believe. And what they want to find out, the core planning team wants to find out what's important for the district to be looking at in the next few years. And few means 3, but whenever we're looking at that, we're looking at what are we doing in the next 5 years is really what a lot of this is centered around. So some of the essential questions that we are going to be asking are, what are the greatest challenges and issues our school district has to address over the next 5 years in order to provide the highest quality of education to our students? Our second question is, what are the most important skills and abilities students need to know or be able to do to be prepared for a successful future? Our third question is, what evidence do you use to evaluate the quality of education in our school district? And then 4, what should the financial priorities be for our school district during the next 5 years? So, and actually just noticed something, go in there and fix this really quick. Have a little bit of a spelling error there. Always good to spell check yourself. So, these are the essential questions that we're going to ask. Now, there is an opportunity for there to be some open-ended questions, and that's what we're going to look at next. But we don't want our forced choice questions to have any more than 4 questions. So these are the questions that we are going to be focusing on. Now, the stakeholder survey open-ended questions are going to be these 2. First, what could the school district do that would delight you? And then 2, what information or advice would you give the strategic planning team as they make decisions about long-term priorities and goals? And while these are more open-ended, they are very important and can definitely provide some very good information to the core planning team as they work through the strategic planning process. Now, there is the question, stakeholders, who are they? So based on what we are wanting to accomplish here, all stakeholders in the school district are who we're targeting, and that does include parents. So by taking a look at the Laswell's community sectors, we're looking at 8 different sectors, and the various ideals and beliefs of the community can truly be adequately represented within these sectors. So this is something that we navigate as we go through that collection of the survey responses. And as you can see, those sectors are power, information, capital, well-being, human development, support, respect, justice, and ethics. So we want to have questions that work well with the information that we're seeking to find, and we ultimately want to have a reflection of the entire community whenever we're doing this. Now, whenever it comes to the confidence level of the amount of feedback that we are getting back, we want to make sure first and foremost that, how are we going to ensure that stakeholders are aware of the survey so we can ensure that we get these survey results? Sending out, links on social media, sending information home, in general, using technology to get that information out there is a really great thing to do. We're able to do advertising through, PTO meetings, parent-teacher conferences. We mentioned the Chamber of Commerce earlier. You have Rotary meetings. There are a lot of different ways for us to get that communication out there. I know we use our robocall a lot here at the school district, and that is something that we would probably seek to use as well. So whenever we're looking at the McDonough County R1 school district, it has a population of 27,900 people. So in order to achieve the 95% confidence level with a confidence interval of 3% that we would like to achieve, the core planning team will need to collect and review data from a minimum of 1,020 respondents. So that is definitely achievable if we do a good job of communicating and getting that information out there. So that is definitely something that we are going to strive to do. So I do think that it's important to indicate that the core planning team does not take this survey. So I would like everybody to take note of that. The next piece that we have with the development is the internal audit. So this is something done by the core planning team and can involve other leaders within the school district, might be, building level administrators, principals, people like that to help with this process. So an internal audit, it is, a questionnaire that we align to the 7 Baldrige criteria, and it is aimed at identifying what the strengths and I'll use the word opportunities for improvement, but really what are those strengths and weaknesses within the organization, within our school district. So as I mentioned before, an internal audit utilizing the Baldrige criteria will be conducted by the core planning team when developing the questionnaire. And the 7 categories for that are first leadership. Okay. Effective organizations have strong leadership, and that could, we have the Board of Education and senior leaders, do they have a clear, vision, mission, values, and commitment to what the organization is doing. Our second category, strategic planning, that is something that we're talking about right now, strategic planning that's currently being used in the district. That is something, has the Board of Education and senior leaders identified what the strategic challenges are, that the district has faced or will face for the next 5 years? And do they have a plan that really identifies whenever they encounter strategic challenges, how are they going to be addressed? Next, we have our student, stakeholder, and then market focus. So, this we're talking about obviously our students who attend our schools, stakeholders, which can also include parents, and our market focus group. So looking at, have we identified ways to get feedback, to listen to students, staff, and other district stakeholders whenever we're trying to find out what the expectations of that group are. The next piece, we've got measurement, analysis, and knowledge management. So where is the organization at when measuring results currently? So that is something that we would definitely need to address. Next piece, number 5, we've got the workforce focus. So, what's the status of what's in place to support the workforce? So to support the people in the school district at the organization, what exactly it is being done. There are a lot of things that can affect the workforce. You've got, level of commitment, performance, and then just overall satisfaction with your staff. You have support staff, faculty, and then those administrators, which ultimately that feeds into organizational culture. So, high performance is very much connected to a motivated workforce. Our next piece here is process management. So what is in place to manage the organization? And that is, maybe an oversimplification of talking about that, but what has the school district identified as its core competencies, and how are we aligning that with our mission, goals, and our action plan? And then results. So that's definitely an important area for us. So this is mainly centered on student learning outcomes for the school district as an organization, because at the end of the day, that is why we are here, is to help students and to help them achieve those learning goals. So, what benchmarks do we have in place, and are we meeting them? Meeting or exceeding them, that would also be very ideal. So that has a lot of different layers to it, obviously, with the results. But the main piece of that is looking at, what's the rate of accomplishment for strategic objectives, helping those students meet those certain student learning outcomes, and then the action plans to help the district meet its targets. So that takes us on to our internal audit group members. So we want to identify who's actually part of that group when it's done. So the core planning team and the building level administrators, which I referenced before. These individuals, they know the most about the school district, so they're the perfect people to do this audit. And the internal audit is going to be done at the same time as the forced choice stakeholder survey is being taken by stakeholders. So that'll be done simultaneously. Now we are going to move on to the data analysis. We've got stakeholder survey data, and then of course the internal audit data. So through the use of that forced choice survey, input is going to be solicited from community members and the school district staff. So you've got some reasoning behind the forced choice surveys. They are a very approachable way to collect data from a large population of stakeholders. And I know that we have to aim for at least 1,020 people to take the survey, but I definitely think we could reach more people. And the forced choice survey, really, the research behind it supports that. And then by completing an internal audit, the core planning team, they can truly establish that baseline of where the district is at. And as it works toward the actual deployment of the strategic plan, that is very, very important to keep in mind. So the analysis of the data is entirely up to the core planning team. And what they've really got to do is they've got to determine priority areas for the team to focus on once they get this data back. So as a team, they can work together to identify those. So that way they aren't, spinning their wheels, going through all this information over and over again, and not truly honing in on what those priorities are and what they want to be able to accomplish. So once they establish that, that will work. You have the Pareto chart that is talked about in UE, and that uses both bars and line graphs with values in a descending order, and it shows significance well, so I think that is definitely something that we will employ with the data analysis, whether it be the stakeholder survey or the internal audit. So now we're ready to move on to our development of the district mission, vision, and goals. The first piece of that is the mission statement. So that's what the school district wants to accomplish. So a mission statement is simply a description of what the school district ultimately wants to accomplish, like I said, and the core planning team has 3 options. Now, they first can keep and continue to approve the current mission statement, so whatever's currently in place. They can choose to modify the current mission statement, or they can completely deviate from that and develop an entirely new mission statement. So this is that first piece of looking at the development of the mission, and the core planning team truly just has full autonomy over this. Our next piece is the vision statement. Now, UE details that the vision statement is a very brief story about what the school district looks like and what it has achieved at a specific time in the future. So that's where that word vision comes in. So the school district, we will center the vision statement on what we'd like to see in 5 years. And the types of questions we'll ask to develop that will be, what do we want to have achieved by then? What will the district look like? What will others say about the district? What will it be like working in the district, and what activities or events will happen then? So, like I said, just a brief story of what the school district looks like and what it hopes to achieve in 5 years. So our next piece is district goals. So we are looking at student learning targets, which are essentially goals that you can kind of use those terms interchangeably. And the goals should reflect the fact that not all academic or social skills and abilities are created equally, and that there exist categories of important skills and abilities that students should learn and the school district should excel in teaching. So benchmark info is something that we start talking about here. We also want to look at, the way that we determine student learning targets is through looking at those benchmarks or other comparisons. And we're also looking at the Baldrige level performance benchmarks that we've talked about previously, just because they are such a solid way of looking at this. So moving on to the strategy map. The strategy aspect of the strategic planning process involves educators, and that could be administrators and teachers, and they are truly the education experts. They are the people that are in the schools working with students every day, and that is something very important to consider. The strategy development process, it begins with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and then your threats analysis. And we'll look at an infographic that kind of breaks that down a little bit. So the district is going to get input on the mission, vision, student learning targets, and strategies from stakeholders through the strategic plan deployment stage, which is going to involve electronic survey data, as we referenced before. So that is something we will talk about a little bit more later. So this is that SWOT analysis. You've got your strategic analysis up top, which is then broken down into internal and external. And then within internal, we have what are our strengths that we can build on and enhance, weaknesses that we want to kind of take away from or resolve. And then on external, we've got the opportunities. How can we expand those? And then threats. How can we get rid of those, or how can we just truly avoid them? So we've next got our development of data, and all data needs to have 5 pieces of information, and those 5 pieces of information are center, which you've got the mean, median, and mode. Okay, so with other terms for those are average, middle, and most frequent. I know those are terms that I associate with math classes, which are not something that always came easy to me. I know some of you have told me that before, so we can relate to that. But anyways, moving forward, we've got spread, which is a variation of data, then shape, how the data is distributed in relation to a bell curve. Then you have a trend, which that's just looking at how do we perform over time. And then 5, results compared to benchmarks showing where the data is in relation to the district's goals, essentially. So now we are finally to the second stage, which is deployment. So we have the deployment of the strategic plan. So deploying the mission, vision, and goals is very important. So first and foremost, you have to have an approval from the Board of Education. That is not negotiable. And really, that should be something that would come easily since 2 members of the board are working on the core planning team. So it is the responsibility of the Board of Education, the senior leaders in the district, and then of course the district staff to help be a part of the deployment of that mission, vision, student learning targets, and the strategic goals. The deployment of the strategic plan will take place throughout the school district and the community. So whenever we're looking at the school district as an organizational deployment, we have district level and school level. For district, we've got senior leaders are going to be the key communicators, might be the superintendent and school board. Then strategic plan, map, and balanced scorecard will be distributed. We're going to talk about balanced scorecard in a little bit. And then you have the mission, vision, and goals being posted throughout the district buildings to keep that communicated. You have the Board of Education. They will be updated on a quarterly basis by the superintendent in regard to how the strategic plan is going. You have the superintendent also visiting schools and focus groups and relaying that information to the core planning team. Now, on a school level, the principal does a lot of that communication. So they are the key communicator. They communicate the strategic plan, strategic map, balanced scorecard to faculty, staff, and then all the other stakeholders they might be in contact with. Principals might also meet with PTA, PTO, identifying expectations and needs that they have. Departments will work to align their BSIP goals to student learning targets. That's something that we already do, so we will definitely do it with this as well. And then teachers will implement strategies for the plan's success and provide feedback to administration. Now for the community, the superintendent will be who communicates with the community. They're the face of the district. And then you have the core planning team meeting quarterly to monitor and update data for the balanced scorecard. And this is information that will be routinely presented at the school board meetings, which is on a monthly basis. They're meeting with the superintendent, not necessarily that often since they are meeting quarterly, but every time they do meet, they will present that information. And then the superintendent will speak about the mission, vision, and goals at stakeholder events such as, the Chamber of Commerce, PTO, PTA meetings, public forums, or even union groups. So the third stage is assessment. So we are first going to look at assessing the success and challenges of the plan. So the core planning team will assess the challenges and the successes and challenges of the plan by first reviewing formative checks such as the benchmarks that we referred to several times, reviewing and assessing stakeholder outlooks and expectations, which can be done through surveys. Then we have challenges that are addressed really on a case-by-case basis, and then working together as a team, the core planning team, to come up with a plan of action for the challenge. So this is utilization-focused evaluation in its purest form. So what is in place for that, and then what formative checks are we doing? And this is the plan that we have set. Now, the balanced scorecard is something that ensures that everyone in the district understands the amount of progress that needs to be accomplished in order for that mission, vision, and then, your 5 strategic goals to be achieved. You've got your, your student learning goals, and then your strategies. Your strategy map. So the core planning team will use those 5 pieces of information that we talked about earlier. You have your center, spread, shape, trend, and results, and compare to benchmarks to communicate with the public about the balanced scorecard. So this will include detailing the successes and challenges of the district, and what it's doing to work toward achieving the mission, vision, and goals. So the scorecard really gives a true good breakdown of where the district's at and where they would like to be, and definitely gives moments for celebration should those goals be achieved within that. I know when I looked at the Columbia Public Schools balanced scorecard, it was a very refreshing way to look at information. That's something that I have previously shared with all of you, and everybody was very much on board with trying to organize our information in the same way, because it is a way to easily communicate with the public in an understandable format that everyone at first glance is able to see what we're measuring, what we are trying to achieve. Now, communicating with the public, how are we going to share the successes and improvements with the public? So the core planning team is going to continue meeting, and with the superintendent being the face of that group, that is who will ultimately be communicating with the community for the school district. But from that core planning team, we do have the school board president, so they will definitely be a leader in that as well. So that's looking at a more broad scope at everyone in our community. Looking at the community and district as a whole is where they come in. And then building administrators and classroom teachers, they're going to be communicating with those stakeholders that they're in more immediate contact with, which is primarily parents. So they are focused on building level. Superintendent and core planning team is focused more on the whole district and community level. So, once the core planning team has assessed what is working, what's not working, we have to have that process in place just to communicate with everyone and make sure that everybody is on the same page. That means internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, and that could be publishing things digitally. That could be, again, putting out robocalls. That could be, again, putting out a balanced school scorecard. So there are a lot of different ways that could be done, but being upfront and transparent is one of the primary goals that we have at the end of the day. So being able to do that and do it well is definitely important. So I hope that everyone has enjoyed this presentation. I am looking forward to employing it in the future, and thank you for attending. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks. Bye.